Well, it's been a few years since I've owned some New York Central freight power. What you're looking at here is a Lionel New York Central L2a. This model came out around 2014, I believe. It was in a set. It was in the, I think the water level freight set. And I had sold off all my New York Central freight steam and a couple diesels probably just before COVID. And recently picked up this and another third rail L3B. Just how it goes, you know, I sell some stuff off, kind of regret it, or see it again for a good price and go, maybe I should get that again. Anyway, this engine's got a few little cosmetic things it needs, got a couple little dingers here and there, but for what I paid for, it's in pretty good shape, and everything works, it runs and drives, doesn't look like it's been smoked. So I've got a few plans for it. First of all, I want to change out these pilot wheels. I always wanted to do that on my old one. The prototype ran 33-inch pilot wheels. Now I have a set of those, but they're on a Hudson right now, so I gotta swap them with this. And then I actually have some proper 36-inch wheels for that Hudson. So I think before I do anything, this thing does run and drive, we're gonna go into the shop and try to bop these wheels off and get them changed out. Lionel likes to put some very tiny pilot wheels on their steamers, and the L2a is no exception. This little bench sequence here shows me with an excuse to use my wheel puller, and I'm in the process of stealing some wheels off my J3A Hudson. I went through this on the J3A Hudson too. They had really small pilot wheels, and they should be 36-inch, so I have these wheels that came off of a Century Club ESE Hudson, and these are 33s, so they were a good compromise. As you can see here, the 33s are the proper fit for an L2A Mohawk, but they cause too much interference with the pilot. It turned out that the pilot wheels for my third rail L3B Mohawk fit the best, and maybe with a little modification they would work, but I decided in the end not to steal them off the L3B and decided to go with another set instead. In the end, I came up with this compromise. These are the original J3A Hudson wheels, which were way too small for the Hudson, but got me a lot closer to what they should be for the L2A. Using this set of pilot wheels will save me a ton of work, and they are a bit closer to the correct size for this model. Maybe someday in the future, I'll revisit putting a correct set of 33s on here. All right, right now I'm in the process of making a Kadee adapter for the L2A tender here, and in the past, I would have, you know, glued styrene and shimmed it and all that stuff. There's plenty of room on this drawbeam, and I think that's how I did my old L2A. I can't really remember. Anyway, with my 3D printing skills where I'm like good enough to be dangerous, I really wanted to do a more elegant design. So I have this little extension off the drawbeam here. And also, it's kind of coved and radiused under here. So what I did was this trick I've been kind of wanting to do for a while, where you take a photograph of some odd shape you want to match up, and then you import that into something that can create like an SVG file out of it. And then when you're done with that, you can export that into Tinkercad and play around with it. So to explain, I took a photo of the tender with my iPhone and did it in a way that, you know, I didn't have any background. I think I just put it on some cardboard, as you can see here. And with the iPhone, you can line up the little crosshairs so you know you're straight on. And I felt that would get me close enough. So once I did that, I imported it into Xtool, which is the Xtool Studio or XCS software. That's what I use for my laser cutter. This has the capability of converting a JPEG or any kind of image file into an SVG, which is just a 2D file that I can kind of play with. So the idea here is that I crop the image of the area I wanted to replicate. And I already edited some of this, but you can see all the points. Sorry to interrupt myself here, but this is actually the trace function in XCS. I forgot to mention that for some reason. You can move them around, and this works pretty slick for this little, simple thing that's kind of embedded in here. You can kind of fine tune all these shapes. So there's that process, and then when you're done, you just, you can export the, you can export it as, you got a choice here, file format, SVG, that kind of stuff. So once you have that, you save it to your drive somewhere, and I'll show you what happens when I bring it into Tinkercad. So this is almost the final piece here. So you see there's a couple like little anomalies in there from the first time. There's a couple ways you could fix that. You could fix the tracing in the Xtool software, or you could like do it here in Tinkercad. One of the things I like to do if I'm trying to make a symmetrical part and I got something wrong on one end, you cut it in half, copy it, and mirror flip it kind of thing. You cut it in half by like parking a big block over it like this, do it more precisely though. That's the basic idea with Tinkercad. If you've never played around with this, I really recommend just checking out a few Tinkercad tutorials on YouTube. This is so much fun to play with. You can kind of turn it into a game for yourself. But anyway, this will be the drawbeam section of the Kadee adapter. So this is basically what I was trying to go for. And I kind of put this little plate on the end here because I didn't really edit those points very well. And to fix that, I was just going to kind of just merge this into the part, and I can get rid of, you can see all that little kind of anomalous area here, but if I move this together and combined it, now you got a nice perfectly flat face. A lot of this, these little things might not even render out by the time it makes it through the printer anyway. And I think this is pretty good. This is certainly a lot nicer and more elegant than like cutting up styrene and all the stuff I used to do. Yeah, so here I did make the part symmetrical just because I wanted to get rid of that one little anomaly there in the end. Should mention that when you import into Tinkercad, you have some different file options are right there. And most of the time it's going to come out to whatever the pixel size of the photo is. So on your way in, you can scale it, or when the part gets dropped onto the work plane here, you can resize it manually. I actually just with my calipers measured the fore and aft and longitudinal measurements and sized them as such in Tinkercad, and it was pretty accurate. So that one piece I showed you, that's pretty close. Like I said, for the effort that went into this, I'm pretty stoked. So this will be incorporated into the rest of the Kadee mount drawbeam adapter. To show you, this is roughly this was the first shot. I just printed it about 2 millimeters thick just to test this shape in this axis. And then when I was kind of happy with that, I decided to try to make the fill piece for this just as a test. These are like very short prints, I think like 10 minutes at the most, I think, for this one. So as you can see, I got the curved radius here, and it kind of fits right in there. Let's see if I can do this. Show you here. That's the idea. All right, so that's kind of the basic part there, just to fill in the drawbeam. What I'll do next is design an adapter piece that goes across the rear shell mounts for the tender shell, and then I'll design an adapter piece to connect this all together, and then I'll put Kadee mount holes in the drawbeam there, so our coupler faces right. I think this was my first attempt to bring that shape into Tinkercad, and basically, it ends up really huge when it comes in, and I set the height to just 2 millimeters just to test it out. But anyway, this is how you would just edit it, and if you get the proportions right, it'll maintain the shape correctly. So I think it was like 12 millimeters wide by 31 and change here, and that kind of got our shape. That's just the fill piece in there, and it's pretty much a standard Kadee height gauge. I just made my own one time because I needed the extended reach there, but that looks pretty good, I think. right, not too bad for first shot. I had to put this little clearance in here, but I didn't give it enough. You see the truck's pretty well captured. Unless I want to just always run in a straight line, that would be fine. But I'm going to hog that out a little bit more. So you can see what I like to do is slot the actual frame mount. That way, you know, I can play with this longitudinal fit. But I might move the shape, the drawbeam fill up about a millimeter or so. Actually, the clearance isn't even really that bad, so I can open up that clearance I have there. I can get a lot closer to the rear Kadee mount if I wanted. It'll give me more mounting options. Typically the transverse ones are fine. God, I got a bunch of Kadees where I just have one screw in there, but don't tell anybody. I have to fix that mismatch in height too if I want to use that rear mount, so yeah. Alright, so here's what's going on. The first print didn't allow for the swing of the rear truck there, so yeah, that was this one, and I had a little correction to make here. So this was the part. It worked really good, right? You know, but the only problem is the way I printed this, I had to support this side to the platen, and I didn't really like the fit on that draw beam. So it's not that bad. I could probably clean it up and maybe use some plastic putty on it or whatever. But I decided, I just thought maybe if I made a two-piece, I got a better top surface. This fits much nicer. And then I was just going to bolt it to this base plate with some 2mm hardware. So I'm going to try this. I do like the fit of this a lot better. Let's fit it up. All right, well, I think I got it. I went with this two-piece design. Right now, I have enough truck clearance for my layout, which I think my sharpest curve might be 081 going into the yard. If I were to do this again, which I, you know, can reprint these almost at will, I would probably just shorten this adapter piece here, and I could get more swing out of the truck if I needed. So if you notice, I didn't use my two mounting holes in the back because these cap screws I'm using, these 2mm cap screws, they're kind of rubbing on the flanges, so I don't need them. Let's see, I got pretty good fit on that draw beam. I've got it filled, got that radius filled in and everything. Like I said, I used to do this stuff with like scrap styrene and just sit here all night just grinding away on it. That's why I have so many files and picks and pointy sticks and stuff like that up there. But anyway, I think this is going to work. I'm going to run with it. I did put a battery in the tender, so I'm hoping that'll help with the sound dropouts. I don't want to put the power tether in there because the Locomotive wasn't dying out on me on the switches or anything like that. But this is from that era in Legacy electronics where if the sounds cut out, you had to stop the engine and do like an aux 10 reset to get the sounds back on. So hopefully the battery cures that. Okay, I think we're about ready to get the engine into the shop now. Don't have much to do on it. There are a couple little cosmetic things to attend to. The bell cord is broken, so I'll have to come up with a fix for that. Other than that, maybe go through the gearbox, make sure it's got enough lube and all that, and probably do a little cleaning on it. I'm suspecting that the smoke was run on this. I don't see any residue on the outside of the engine right now, but I can smell that it's been run once or twice. So I'm going to go through and make sure that's nice and clean so I'm not dealing with that later when I'm trying to do the weathering. So let's get the engine into the shop, get it onto the bench. All right, so we're in the shop with the Locomotive now, and I'm just going to go through it. It's in pretty good shape. Tires aren't rotted off or nothing. As you can see, I have the Legacy L2a pilot truck on here. I think I'm just going to run with this for the time being. I haven't decided if I want to do anything else. Like I said, the ESE wheels, which were the proper size, just they ended up rubbing in here. And I just didn't want to do all the work of grinding this out. It might not be that much work, really, but if I steal those ESE wheels from my Hudson, then I gotta put some other wheels back on there. And turned out the Niagara wheel set is the proper one, but that would take some doing. So you can see there's a few little cosmetic chunkies taken out of this engine. Not a big deal. Here's my broken belt cord. I don't even know if that's brass wire. It must be. It looks, I see a little brass tinge to it there. I should have some scrap brass wire in my junk box somewhere. By the way, this engine kind of predated Lionel putting the whistle steam and everything, so I don't have like an unsightly hole in the boiler. Also, they didn't, split the one of the domes for the switches, which I actually kind of prefer. I don't really mess with the switches that much, other than programming the engine ID, which is like, I'll do that like once, maybe. Anyway, these are the switches under here. I've never run a Legacy engine without the Odyssey, which is, for those that don't know, that's their speed control, which I happen to really like. I think Legacy speed control is the best in O-Gauge, mostly because all the speed steps are completely usable. There is a bit of a curve to their speed step arrangement, but when I'm done, I'm going to do another test run on this once I do the maintenance. We're going to open it up, take a look inside, see what I got to clean up. All right, so we've got the boiler propped up here in some foam. Just taking a look inside. I just wanted to go through and maybe look for anything amiss. Already I see one of the power leads could probably stand to be tucked in there. Board's a little loose, not too worried about that, but I did find the motor loose. So I'll tighten up the mount here. So this looks like this is the old Lionel RC-MC board from the early 2010s, I guess. I think they're using the LCP now. I'm not the biggest expert on Lionel electronics anymore. I just appreciate when they work, and for the most part, their stuff seems pretty robust. Had some trouble with some of the newer boards, the newer version of this, but for those unfamiliar, typically on a steam engine, this board will just host like motor and smoke and light control, and then it'll send instruction back to the tender for the sounds on board the tender, and that'll do it by a serial line that'll run the IR LED here in the IR tether, so that'll communicate with the tender to tell it when to chuff, when to blow the whistle, all that sort of stuff. Anyway, I'm going to take this board off anyway because I wanted to check out the gearbox. Kind of interesting, on this board, the way it's mounted, they're heat sinking the bridge rectifier into this nice big heat sink here. Not so much, I guess these are heat sinks on these MOSFETs here, but they're pretty small on the board itself. Anyway, here's our gearbox cover, and yeah, this is the stuff I wanted to attend to. I'm gonna have to reheat shrink this guy here. All right, after all that, I just totally redid that whole splice anyway. The wires were all frayed and coming apart, and then that cold solder blob wasn't really holding stuff together right, so I just stripped everything back, and I made kind of two pigtails, soldered them up, and then kind of lap soldered them over each other. And then there's 2 layers of heat shrink holding it together, so that's not going to go anywhere. And now that's attended to. Let's get into the gearbox here. Really doesn't look too bad at all. I kind of like that they do these bearings on either end. And yeah, actually it looks pretty good. Let's get you a closer look. Alright, so I'm just cleaning out the gearbox. There was plenty of lube in there in my opinion, but I just wanted to go through and make sure nothing was amiss. So I kind of ran a Q-tip in and out of there too, just to get some of the old grease out. I actually kind of feel like Lionel uses pretty good grease, and I felt like there was enough in here, but it's worth cleaning out. This engine's more than 10 years old already, so I'm just going through cleaning off the worm and all that stuff too. Try not to leave anything behind with my from my cleaning utensils here, which is really just a clean toothpick and a Q-tip. So everything looks good. I don't see any undue wear or anything like that. Alright, so here's one of Lionel's kind of double reduction gearbox, I guess. So this one here is basically the worm gear, or the worm wheel. And next to it's kind of a spur gear, and then there's a spur gear on the axle. So the final drive ends up still around like the classic 17 or 18 to 1 gear ratio, motor versus drivers. But I believe, Lionel went with this arrangement to reduce like backlash or whatever, so that speed control can be more useful. If that's not the reason, somebody knows, yeah, just let me know. But if you can see, there is like a bushing to keep this like lateral thrust in check here, so it keeps it pretty reasonably centered across the worm gear. Now, if you watched one of my L1 videos, we had troubles. It wasn't the gearbox really, it was the worm. The worm gear itself wasn't set correctly for thrust, and in reverse it would get basically screwed back into the motor and bind up. So shimming the motor out away from the gearbox helped, because those are like direct drive. This has a little dog bone, which is pretty nice. I think if you watched my Y6 video, I don't know if I fixed it on that, but that had a bad dog bone in there, and it got chewed up, so I had to fix all that. But anyway, grease. I subscribe to using this Lubriplate 110. I don't like a sticky grease. This is technically like a calcium grease, and just get it in there with a stick. I don't go crazy with grease, man. I don't know what people go on about with the grease. Some people like to use like automotive, like red bearing grease or wheel bearing grease. I think that stuff's too thick. And Lubriplate was something recommended by Jim Barrett many years ago. It's 110, and I'll show you the can here in a moment. But basically, that's what I do. I get it in there, then I'll start, moving it around, and I'll just with my finger, I'll make sure that grease gets into the gears, into the teeth of the gears like that. It's like my favorite thing. I'll do it to the worm, and I'll also do it to that spur gear. But I'll just do this for a little bit. All right, we're pretty much back together. I got enough grease in there. There's a couple of little bearings on that intermediate shaft. You can access them from the side, or you can oil them from inside the gearbox when you're re-lubing it. But that's about as much grease as I feel I need in there. So I'm gonna get ready to put this back together. I'm also just gonna put a little heat sink grease back here on the heat sink, just to help with the thermal transfer from that bridge rectifier here to the heat sink. So make sure I'm not trapping any wires under there. Put that back in place. Then I can tighten this motor up too and finish cleaning up in here. Yeah, so this is the stuff I use. So if you look it up, it's like a calcium grease, which isn't too far off from basically like garage door opener grease. So I like it. Seems to work really well. And I got this can. It's going to last me a very long time, I hope. Just a quick example, too, why I take everything apart when I'm setting up a new engine. You know, just look for stuff like this. Easy fix, you know. But I don't know. I don't know how that got loose, but we'll fix it. All right, to tighten up the motor, I had to take the trailing truck apart here, and it's these 3 screws that are up in there. So I don't know, this was all greased up. I think it was just a little excessive, so I'm trying to clean as much of it out as I can. But motor's nice and tight now. Make sure it's straight too. I was able to fix the bell cord by cleaning it up and kind of lap soldering it. Not too unlike when I fixed some of my leads. But it took. So now I'll be able to tuck it back in here and reconnect it. All right, not too bad, I guess. I don't know. Stuff must be like phosphor bronze or something, because it's got a little spring to it. I didn't have anything this thin in my metal scrap drawer, so it's good I was able to repair it. I have to admit, sometimes I really like working on the die-cast stuff. A lot of it is so simple. I wanted to repaint these cab figures. I'm not much for doing anything with my steam locomotive cabs, but I did want to repaint these guys. And it's just kind of cool how easily some of these engines come apart. There are just 2 screws under here, and the cab just comes right off. Getting ready to do some weathering here, so I'm just masking up all my markers and other lights. I just use these cheap, I guess they're leather punches, to just punch some masking tape circles out. All right, just got done cleaning up the L2a Mohawk here. A little bit of Windex hair dryer. I use my airbrush, just the just the old, just to kind of move the Windex out of the nooks and crannies and crevices while I'm cleaning. I use a dedicated chip brush. It's around here somewhere, to kind of wash it down. That gets all if there's any smoke fluid residue at all, gets it off the surfaces at least. Also, any of the oils from my hands and stuff like that. Doing the maintenance, putting the boiler back on, it's pretty normal to get some grease smudges and stuff like that. So this just gets it ready. I really like this engine. This is the second time I've owned one. And I remember when the first one, the 2793, came out with TMCC. I always liked that sound set. A buddy of mine had brought it over to my old layout that I used to have, a long time ago, and just remembered my layout wasn't quite done yet, but we were running around the layout, and I really liked all these lines that go up to the feed water heater and stuff. I thought it was a cool looking engine, and I think this is one of the early Carrier brass builds. Now this has, I don't like this sometimes, but some of these boiler shapes have what I call like a boiler curtain. You'll see it beneath the running boards on a lot of the Lionels. This one does a real good job hiding it though, so it's not terrible. Some engines though, it's really noticeable. Even like my J1A, I think it kind of comes down too far, but for some reason, you can see it a little more prominently on this side here, just under this rear air tank. That's how they make it cheaper probably to do the boiler in one piece, and it just kind of drops over the frame, but it also kind of hides some of the exposed innards. All right, pretty much done with the airbrush work, so this is about as far as I'll go. And if you look, it's kind of, doesn't really pop, you know. I mean, it's pretty pretty static looking or something, you know. So the final phase will be some careful dry brushing. So I'll do it on the driver's running gear, and I'll use like a light gray typically, and it'll just pop the details, and I think that really helps just kind of liven it up, you know. So these are the colors I used. Use some classic Model Master and some vintage Polyscale acrylics. A little bit of Model Air. I'll use this very sparingly, like I use that on the couplers. So these are the basic colors I use. Some railroad tie brown, engine black over the top of the smoke box, and then I use some, these are my AK weathering pencils. So neutral gray, and there's a color around here I like to use a lot called smoke. I'll use that. Black on the smoke box. So the other thing I'll do too is some really minimal chalking. Just a little bit of brown rust on the running boards. So I think the final phase really kind of helps pop things. It helps with like the separation too. And that's what I mean by popping the details. It kind of lights them up a little bit. So I usually, that railroad tie brown I'll use on some of the running gear. I'll use on the most visible pilot wheel. It'll be like the first color I'll use on the coupler. I'll hit the trailing truck a lot and kind of hit the rear two drivers. I've never really modeled like the pulverized sand, which almost turns white like on railroads like the C&O. I've never done that on a model. Never thought it looked right. But anyway, New York Central probably wouldn't have done that much anyway, because I mean, it's the water level route, you know, and pretty small sand dome, you know, relative to others you've seen on more mountain traversing railroads like the Pennsy, C&O, etc. So we will commence with the final phase of weathering. There's a tender too. And get this thing on with the layout. I'm just doing a little bit of chalking on the running boards. I like to use this, it's kind of a combination of all these scrapings that have fallen into this bowl. These are like some pigments and some pastels. And these should last me the rest of my life, I think. But I'll take a nasty, abused brush like this, and I'll just rub it through there, you know, and then just kind of shake some of it off onto the table here. I do not try to get the stuff wet because the pigment's really, really strong. So I use very little, and I'll just kind of just dust it on there, you know, and don't have to be too exact. Don't use a lot. Like I said, I don't use any water because it'll light right up. So anyway, from the colors I've seen, you can go almost all the way to a rusty color too. But this is sort of rust infused. I've got some black and stuff in here, and some other various tones that have kind of filtered to the bottom of that bowl. But that's about all I'll really do. Alright, well the L2a project is now on the layout. I think it's ready for service. I'm mostly pretty pleased with how the project came out. It was a lot of fun. Didn't have too much stuff to fix on it. I was expecting a few things, but was pleasantly surprised. It wasn't like a total beater. So look forward to running this for hopefully many years to come. Hopefully I won't get fickle-hearted again about the New York Central and decide to get rid of all of it again. Right now I don't have a caboose to run, so I don't know if you spied in the background of some of the bench videos. There was an NJ International 19,000 series caboose I hope to work on here pretty soon. And I guess let me know in the comments if you're interested in seeing one of these brass caboose projects. I've done several. I've filmed a lot of them, but I've never put together a video on them because I just didn't think there'd be much interest. So anyway, I'll probably get that done because I have another Mohawk I'm working on, third rail L3B, and that's gonna need a caboose. So right now I'll film the final run segments, but I'll try not to film the last few cars of the train. So anyway, I guess let's get to it. One last thing, I just wanted to demonstrate why I like some of the Legacy controls so much, especially in the speed step arrangements and how they're all usable. Even the first speed step steps out quite nicely. This engine being equipped with a Cannon motor doesn't cog a whole lot at low speed, so I really like that. And all the speed steps of a typical Legacy engine are usable. And this has pretty proper 4-chuff exhaust. So the only thing I really don't like about Legacy engines of any vintage is some of the sounds. Like, you're not hearing it so much now, but at low speed you'll get like some of these little squeaky sounds. You can't turn them off, you can't turn them down. Yeah, there it goes there. Some people liken that to like a donkey sound, like doing the old Eeyore thing or something, I don't know. Anyway, yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of those sounds, but it's still a pretty cool engine. So let's film the final segments and be done with this.